The night San Antonio shook the league, this was not just a win. This was not just another playoff headline, another box score, another highlight package that disappears by morning. What happened tonight in Oklahoma City felt like the exact second the NBA's future kicked the door open and announced itself to the entire world. The San Antonio Spurs walked into a Game 7 on the road, inside one of the loudest buildings in basketball, against a Thunder team that had every reason to believe this was still their moment. Oklahoma City had the crowd, they had the pressure, they had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander fighting like a superstar who refused to let his season die. They had the confidence of a team that had already been through the fire. And still, San Antonio did not blink. That is the part people are going to remember. Not just that the Spurs won, but how they won. They played like a group that was too young to understand fear, but too disciplined to be called lucky. They moved the ball, they defended with purpose, they trusted every man on the floor. And when the Thunder tried to turn the night into chaos, the Spurs answered with cold, calm, ruthless basketball. At the center of it all stood Victor Wembanyama, the two-year-old giant carrying the weight of a franchise's past and the promise of its future. For years, people wondered when the Spurs would return to the stage they once owned. Since 2014, San Antonio fans had watched the dynasty fade, the roster change, the playoffs slip away, and the league move on without them. But tonight, the league had no choice but to look back. Because Wemby and this fearless young Spurs team did not just reach the NBA Finals. They made it feel like the beginning of something much bigger. A new chapter, a new identity, maybe even a new dynasty forming in real time. So before we break down the game, the emotion, the reactions, and the warning this sends to the New York Knicks, tell me where you are watching from right now. If you believe the Spurs are opening a new era, press 1" the comment. If you think the Knicks are about to stop this story cold, press 2. And if you love NBA stories like this, make sure you subscribe, because this finals drama is only getting started. The Game 7, pressure that exposed everything. Before the ball even went up, you could feel the weight inside that arena. Oklahoma City was not just loud. It was desperate, hungry, nervous, and ready to explode. Every fan in that building understood what was on the line. Game 7 does not give you a second chance. It does not care about excuses, injuries, youth, hype, or regular season success. It strips every team down to the truth. And the truth came fast. The Thunder wanted to turn the night into a storm. They wanted speed, noise, pressure, and emotion. They wanted San Antonio to feel young. They wanted Victor Wembanyama to feel the building shaking. They wanted Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, Julian Champagnie, Devin Vassell, and every other Spur to remember they were standing in enemy territory with an NBA Finals ticket hanging over every possession. But the Spurs came out like they had already made peace with the pressure. They did not rush. They did not panic. They did not play like a team waiting for Wemby to save them every trip down the floor. That was the first warning sign for Oklahoma City. San Antonio was not depending on one miracle. They were playing connected basketball. One pass led to another. One defensive rotation covered the next. One player made a mistake, and another player cleaned it up. That is how a young team becomes dangerous. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did everything a superstar is supposed to do. He attacked, he created, he found contact. He kept searching for the soft spot in the defense. But every time he looked up, there was length, pressure, and resistance. Wembanyama's shadow was waiting near the rim. Castle was fighting over screens. The Spurs were not trying to embarrass SGA. They were trying to make every decision feel expensive. And slowly, the game began to reveal itself. This was not San Antonio surviving Oklahoma City. This was San Antonio controlling Oklahoma City. The Thunder pushed, but the Spurs answered. The crowd rose, but the Spurs quieted it. Every time it felt like the game might tilt, San Antonio found the next composed possession. That is what made the night so frightening for the rest of the league. The Spurs did not look like visitors. They looked like a team that belonged exactly where they were. The system behind the shock. The biggest mistake anyone could make after this game is calling it a miracle. Miracles happen once. Miracles disappear when the shooting cools off, when the crowd gets louder, when the other team makes a run. What San Antonio showed in Game 7 was not a miracle. It was a system, it was preparation, it was culture, wearing a new uniform. The Spurs did not win because one player went nuclear and dragged everyone else across the finish line. They won because 7 different players were ready to matter. That is the terrifying part. Oklahoma City could not load up on one option because San Antonio kept finding the next one. If Wembanyama drew 2 defenders, the ball moved. If the Thunder closed hard on the first shooter, the extra pass found the second. If the game got physical, Keldon Johnson gave them force. If the moment got tight, Devin Vassell gave them confidence. And then there was Julian Champagnie. Every championship run has a player like that. The name casual fans do not always circle before the game, but the name the losing team remembers afterward. Champagnie stepped into shots like he had been waiting his whole life for that exact night. 6 threes in a Game 7 do not just change a scoreboard. They change the emotional temperature of a building. Every make felt like a message. You can survive Wemby for one possession, but you cannot survive the Spurs if everyone else believes. Defensively, San Antonio was even more impressive. They did not stop Shai Gilgeous-Alexander by pretending one defender could erase him. They built a wall of decisions around him. Stephon Castle made him work before the catch, work after the screen, work just to breathe. And behind all of that was Wembanyama, not always blocking the shot, but changing the thought before the shot even happened. That is real defense. Oklahoma City kept searching for comfort and never found it. Every lane felt narrower. Every jumper felt rushed. Every pass had a hand near it. The Spurs were not just playing hard. They were playing together, and in a Game 7, together beats talented when talented starts to fracture. That is why this win matters. It was not random. It was not temporary. It looked repeatable, and that should scare everybody still standing. The superstar who changed the air around the rim. Victor Wembanyama did not need to score 50 to own this game. That is what makes him different. Some stars dominate only when the ball is in their hands. Wemby changes the game before he touches it, before the play develops, before the opponent even decides what kind of shot they want. Oklahoma City felt that all night. Every drive came with a question. Is he there? Can he reach this? Will this angle even exist by the time I leave the floor? That is the invisible pressure Wembanyama puts on an offense. He does not just block shots. He edits decisions. He turns clean lanes into hesitation. He turns confident finishers into passers. He turns normal basketball into a math problem nobody wants to solve in Game 7. But the most important part of his night was not just his length, his timing, or his talent. It was his maturity. For a 22-year-old carrying this much attention, Wembanyama played with a calm that felt almost impossible. He did not chase the moment. He let the moment come to him. When the Spurs needed a basket, he found the right shot. When the Thunder sent extra bodies, he trusted the pass. When San Antonio needed defense, he protected the paint like the entire franchise history was standing behind him. That is leadership. And what makes this even more dangerous is that Wemby is no longer just a future idea. He is not simply the prospect people talk about in predictions, debates, and highlight clips. He is here now in the deepest part of the postseason, forcing elite teams to adjust their entire identity around his presence. The Spurs once had Tim Duncan, a quiet force who made greatness feel simple. Now they have a new kind of cornerstone, taller, stranger, more futuristic, but carrying that same Spurs principle. The team comes first, the game comes first, winning comes first. That is why this run feels so powerful. Wembanyama is spectacular, but he is not selfish. He is emotional, but not reckless. He is young, but not careless. And in Game 7 against the Thunder, he looked less like a player hoping to become the face of the league someday, and more like a player who just realized that day may have already arrived. The tears that told the real story. When the final buzzer sounded, Victor Wembanyama did not celebrate like a man who had simply won a basketball game. He reacted like someone who had been carrying years of pressure, expectation, doubt, responsibility, and belief, and for the first time, all of it finally had somewhere to go. He looked around and saw his teammates. He saw the faces of the guys who had fought with him through every adjustment, every criticism, every brutal possession, every moment when outsiders questioned whether San Antonio was ready for this stage. And then the emotion hit him. That was the moment the night became bigger than basketball. Wemby hugged Devin Vassell. He reached for his teammates. He let the tears come because there was no reason to hide them. Not after a Game 7 road win, not after bringing the Spurs back to the NBA Finals, not after proving that this young team was not just a cute story, not just a future threat, not just a collection of prospects waiting for someday. Someday had arrived. And the beautiful thing was that his emotion did not make him look smaller. It made him look more real. Fans do not connect with greatness only because of trophies, stats, and highlight. They connect with the human cost behind those things. They connect with the sacrifice, the late nights, the weight of a city, the dream that starts when a kid is far from the NBA and somehow survives long enough to become real under the brightest lights in the sport. That is what people saw in Wembanyama's tears. They saw a young superstar who cares deeply. They saw a leader who does not need to pretend he is made of stone. They saw someone who understands that winning is not just about being taller, faster, or more gifted. It is about giving yourself completely to the team beside you. And when he talked about his teammates, that message became even louder. The trophy, the spotlight, the cameras, none of it seemed to matter more than the guys standing behind him. That is Spurs basketball at its purest. The superstar leads, but the group carries the meaning. By the end of the night, Wembanyama was no longer just the future of San Antonio. He was the heartbeat of it. The basketball world reacts. The reaction did not stay inside Oklahoma City for long. The second that final buzzer hit, the story escaped the arena and spread across the entire basketball world. Phones lit up. Former players posted. Current stars reacted. Fans who had no connection to San Antonio suddenly understood they had just watched something that felt bigger than one team winning one series. That is how you know a moment is real. Manu Ginobili's reaction carried a different kind of weight. He was not just another legend watching from the outside. He was part of the old Spurs bloodline, part of the era that taught the league how beautiful basketball could look when ego disappeared and trust took over. So when Manu celebrated this new Spurs team reaching the finals, it felt like one generation placing its hand on the shoulder of the next. That matters, because San Antonio is not a franchise built on noise. It is built on standards. It is built on passing the ball when the easy headline would be taking the shot. It is built on defending when nobody is clapping for defense. It is built on humility, patience, and the kind of daily work that does not always trend online, but wins in May and June. Magic Johnson's praise made the moment feel even larger. When a player whose name is attached to Western Conference greatness recognizes Wembanyama and the Spurs, it is not empty attention. It is a signal. It means the league's legends are not just impressed by the highlights. They see the structure. They see the maturity. They see a young superstar learning how to win before the world even expected him to be here. And the current players saw it too. Some kept it short because sometimes there is not much else to say. Great game, great series, great basketball. Those simple words hit hard because they came from people who understand how difficult this is. Players know the difference between hype and substance. They know when a team is hot for a week, and they know when a team has real championship bone. Tonight, the Spurs earned that recognition. The most dangerous thing in sports is when talent becomes respected. San Antonio already had the talent. After Game 7, they got the respect. And once a young team has both, the rest of the league starts watching them differently. Not as a surprise. As a problem, Oklahoma City's pain and the respect that followed. On the other side of the celebration was a Thunder team that had to stand in the wreckage of its own season and accept the hardest truth in basketball. Sometimes you give everything you have, and it still is not enough. Oklahoma City did not fold. That needs to be said clearly. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander fought like a superstar. He attacked through pressure, absorbed contact, created offense when possessions looked broken, and kept trying to drag the Thunder back into the game, even when San Antonio seemed to have an answer for every punch. There were moments when the building wanted to explode, when one Thunder run felt like it might finally crack the Spurs, but the crack never came. That is what made the loss so painful. Oklahoma City was not beaten by a lucky shot or one strange bounce. They were beaten by a team that stayed composed longer, trusted each other deeper, and executed cleaner when the air got tight. The Thunder kept reaching for momentum, and San Antonio kept taking it back. For SGA, that reality had to hurt. He is too competitive for it not to. But what made his response powerful was the respect. He did not hide behind excuses. He did not reduce the Spurs to a hot shooting night. He understood what had just happened. San Antonio had walked into his building in Game 7 and proved they had the makeup of a real finals team. That kind of praise from the losing superstar matters more than noise from the outside, because Shai felt it possession by possession. He felt Wembanyama changing the rim. He felt Castle fighting through screens. He felt the extra pass finding shooters. He felt the Spurs refusing to panic when Oklahoma City made its push. So when he gave San Antonio credit, it was not politeness, it was recognition. And for the Thunder, this loss does not erase who they are. It may sharpen them. Pain like this can break a team, or it can become the memory that fuels everything they do next. Oklahoma City still has talent, pride, and a superstar capable of returning to this stage. But this night belonged to San Antonio. The Thunder learned what the rest of the league is learning now. The Spurs are no longer coming someday. They are already here. The Spurs culture has been reborn. What makes this San Antonio run so dangerous is that it does not feel disconnected from the franchise's past. It feels like the old Spurs spirit has returned, wearing younger legs, longer arms, faster tempo, and a completely new face at the center of everything. For years, people talked about Spurs culture like it belonged to another era. Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Greg Popovich, ball movement, sacrifice, quiet excellence, no drama, no shortcuts, no empty noise. That identity once ruled the NBA, but after the dynasty faded, it was fair to wonder when San Antonio would ever feel like San Antonio again. Now we have the answer. It feels like this. It feels like Victor Wembanyama trusting the pass instead of chasing numbers. It feels like Stephon Castle defending, as if every screen is personal. It feels like Dylan Harper playing with the confidence of a rookie who has no interest in waiting his turn. It feels like Devin Vassell stepping into big shots without needing the spotlight first. It feels like Keldon Johnson bringing force, energy, and edge when the game starts turning into a fight. That is how a culture comes back to life. Not through nostalgia, not through old championship banners hanging above the court, not through fans simply wishing the past could return. Culture is reborn when new players choose the same principles under new pressure. And that is exactly what the Spurs did in Oklahoma City. They did not win by trying to copy the old dynasty. They won by carrying its values into a new era. The ball still moved. The defense still mattered. The superstar still trusted his teammates. The role players still believed their moment could come. The whole team still acted like the name on the front of the jersey meant more than the name on the back. That is why this run feels bigger than one postseason. San Antonio did not just find a franchise player. They found a foundation. They found a group that fits together emotionally, strategically, and competitively. They found the rare combination every organization claims to want, but almost never truly builds. Elite talent with collective humility, and now the rest of the NBA has to deal with. Because once Spurs culture is alive again, history tells us it does not disappear quietly. The Knicks are waiting. Now the story turns toward New York, and that is where everything gets even louder. Because beating Oklahoma City was the announcement. The NBA Finals will be the test. The Spurs have already proven they can survive pressure, silence a hostile building, and stand tall in a Game 7 against one of the most dangerous teams in basketball. But the Knicks bring a different kind of challenge. They bring history. They bring physicality. They bring Madison Square Garden energy. They bring a fan base that has been waiting for a moment like this with a hunger that can shake an entire city. This is not just Spurs versus Knicks. This is youth versus urgency. The new era versus the starving giant. San Antonio's calm system against New York's emotional fire. Wembanyama's impossible length against a team that will try to hit first, hit often, and make every possession feel personal. That is what makes this finals matchup so fascinating. The Spurs cannot walk into this series thinking the hard part is over. In many ways, the hard part is only beginning. The Knicks will not care about San Antonio's beautiful story. They will not care about Wemby's tears, Manu's reaction, or the basketball world calling this the birth of something special. New York is not stepping into the finals to become a supporting character in someone else's movie. They want their own ending. And that is where the Spurs must prove what kind of team they really are. Are they satisfied because they made it this far? Or are they dangerous because they still feel unfinished? Are they just happy to be young and ahead of schedule? Or do they truly believe the Larry O'Brien trophy is not a dream anymore, but a target? Wembanyama's answer already seems clear. This does not feel like a player who wants applause for reaching the stage. This feels like a player who understands that the stage means nothing if you do not perform once you get there. The Knicks are waiting. The lights will be brighter. The hits will be harder. The noise will be bigger. But after what San Antonio just did in Oklahoma City, one thing is impossible to ignore. The Spurs are not afraid of loud rooms anymore. What this run really means, when the noise fades, when the cameras leave the floor, when the celebration clips stop looping across every NBA page, this Spurs run will still matter. Not because of one final score, not because of one emotional interview, not because of one young superstar standing under the brightest lights in basketball. It will matter because San Antonio reminded the league of something that often gets forgotten in an era obsessed with shortcuts. Greatness is not built in one night. It is built in the quiet seasons when nobody is calling you dangerous. It is built when the dynasty is gone, when the old names are retired, when the banners still hang above the arena but the team on the court is trying to find itself again. It is built through losing seasons, hard practices, uncomfortable film sessions, painful mistakes, and the patience to keep believing before the rest of the world sees the vision. That is what makes this story so powerful. The Spurs did not return to the NBA Finals by accident. They returned because they stayed loyal to the principles that once made them great. They trusted development. They valued character. They protected their culture. They did not panic when the rebuild looked slow. They did not chase empty noise just to feel relevant for one news cycle. They waited, they worked, and when Victor Wembanyama arrived, they did not simply hand him a jersey and ask him to save everything alone. They gave him a foundation, and that is the difference between having a superstar and building something that can last. Wembanyama is extraordinary. Everybody can see that. His size, his timing, his skill, his defensive reach, his emotional connection to the game, all of it feels like something the NBA has never truly seen before. But this run is bigger than one player because even a generational talent needs a team that believes with him. Stephon Castle matters, Dylan Harper matters, Devin Vassell matters, Keldon Johnson matters, Julian Champagnie matters, every screen matters, every closeout matters, Every extra pass matters. Every teammate who accepts a smaller spotlight so the group can chase something bigger becomes part of the story. That is how a roster becomes a team. That is how a team becomes a threat. And that is how a threat becomes a championship contender. The lesson here is simple, but it is not easy. Talent opens the door, but trust walks through it. San Antonio trusted each other in Oklahoma City. They trusted the pass when the crowd wanted panic. They trusted the game plan when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander started attacking. They trusted their defense when the Thunder made run. They trusted their young players in moments where most teams would have tightened up. And because of that trust, the Spurs looked older than their age, calmer than their experience, and stronger than the pressure around them. That is why the finals against the Knicks are so fascinating. New York will not care about the romance of this Spurs story. The Knicks will bring force, pride, physicality, and the hunger of a city that has waited too long for a championship moment. They will test Wembanyama's body. They will test San Antonio's patience. They will test every young player who thinks he is ready for the highest stage in the sport. But Game 7 already told us something important. The Spurs are not afraid of the moment anymore. They may win the championship now, or they may be forced to learn one more painful lesson before they reach the top. That is the beauty and cruelty of basketball. Nothing is promised, no story is guaranteed, no dynasty is born just because people want it to be. But what San Antonio has shown is real. The unity is real. The discipline is real. The emotional bond is real. The future is real. And maybe that is the most human part of this entire run. It is not just about winning. It is about growing together, failing together, believing together, and refusing to let pressure turn teammates into strangers. In a league full of noise, the Spurs are proving that calm can still be powerful. In a world that wants everything immediately, they are proving that patience can still be rewarded. In a sport built around stars, they are proving that the team still matters. So whatever happens next against New York, remember this night. Remember Wembanyama's tears. Remember the road crowd going quiet. Remember the young Spurs standing together like they had already been through 10 playoff wars. Remember that a franchise once known for timeless excellence has found a new heart. The Spurs are back. Not as a memory, not as nostalgia, not as a shadow of the Duncan, Parker, Ginobili era. They are back as something new, something young, something hungry, something peaceful in its belief, but dangerous in its execution. Now I want to hear from you. If you believe San Antonio can finish this story and win the championship, press 1 inch the comments. If you think New York will shock the world and stop Wembanyama's rise, press 2. Like the video, share it with another NBA fan, and subscribe to the channel. Because the finals are here, the stakes are massive, and this new Spurs era is only beginning.